What is happening out there, rotoscouts baseball fans? Welcome to the Thursday show, gang. Nice, easy breezy little three-gamer tonight. We had a three-gamer this afternoon. Yankees and Astros are playing at 5 o'clock. Weird little getaway day schedule. As usual on Thursdays, it's always messy. But we're here to break down tonight's three-gamer. We've got NBA projections up on the site if you're looking for the NBA two-gamer. Small slates abound, but it should be a fun one. Easy looking one to break down. Starting out a couple minutes late. Apologies for the 2-minute extra wait there. It's one of those days where I actually should have probably just scheduled the show at 3 o'clock because I was done with everything. And then I've just literally been sitting here watching the minutes tick away for the last half hour. And then managed to go 2 minutes overtime before starting the show. Because I'm just that good. But what's going on? We got Cujo here. We've got Andy Melman here. Good to see you guys. A couple other folks already here hanging out for the small slate. Not expecting a big crowd. I know there's a lot of content out there these days, but it's also a really limited slate. DraftKings has better contests than FanDuel as usual. Looks like DraftKings had their regular, the big mini max up, and I think at $25K up top. FanDuel is only at 10, I want to say. Smaller contests on FanDuel anyway. So I'm expecting not that much interest in this slate, but it should be a good one to talk about. A couple interesting corners to look at. Let me pull up the board here. So we've got, apologies for this being messy. I had the early games in here for the morning. I did both slates on the website with projections and stuff. Before we get into everything, by the way, how about the New York Knicks? You guys watch that game last night? Brunson misses half of it, playing hurt the second half of it. OG comes out after in the second half, playing like 6 guys. Our 6 role players will beat your starters. No problem. Love this team. Absolutely love this team. Do they have the horses to win the title? No. I don't think so. Anything can happen. I'm not ruling it out, but I really don't think so. Maybe if Randall was here, as we've talked about on other shows. But damn, they've been fun to watch. And I think they're going to get the Pacers at least in this round, and then we'll see what happens with the Celts. I could see them getting to the finals. It'd be a tall order to beat the Celtics, though. Celtics are really, really good. Let me mute my phone here. Andy saying maybe the Indy money line tomorrow. That's one way to go. Look, I expect Indy to fight back. I don't think it's going to be a sweep by any means. So, yeah, going back to Indy makes some sense to take a look at, I would think, on the money line, depending on what it looks like, of course. And also, checking those injuries for the Knicks, keep an eye on Brunson. I assume JB's going to play, considering that he played the second half Willis Reed style. We'll see what happens with OG, but we know that Mitch is gone. We know that Randall's gone. We know that Bojan's gone. Knicks are really depleted. It's amazing that they're making it work with the group that they are. It's just a testament to how good that core of guys is defensively, hustle plays, working in and around the rim and threes. They're just well designed. It's a shame that they're as depleted as they are. Full team would be more interesting. Edward B's here from Burgo, North Carolina. Love it. Welcome, buddy. Good to see you. Yeah, let's get this one. So, as I was saying, little three-gamer. Guardians at the White Sox, 8-run total in that one. 4.33 on the board for the Guardians. 3.87 on the White Sox side. The Cards and the Brewers, 8-run total there. 4.51 for the Cards. 3.68 on the Brewers side. Sonny Gray, the top pitcher overall on the slate, it looks like. Tobias Myers going for the Brewers. We've got Fede going for the White Sox, and Ben Lively going for the Guardians in that first game. And then Waka against Detmers in the last game. The Royals at the Angels. 8.5-run total. A little bit juicier for runs, slightly. But I haven't checked these in just a couple of minutes, so it might have all evened out. But you got a 4.41 implied total for the Royals and a 4.29 on the board for the Angels. Cards pulling in with the biggest run total on the board at 4.51. We know how disappointing these St. Louis Cardinals can be and have been and are on a regular basis. So that's a interesting / maybe uncomfortable one. I don't mind game stacks on three gamers. It's not usually something I'm chasing on bigger ones. I usually have more of a spread. But if you're building a couple lineups, maybe you zero in on one of these games. I kind of think that the Guardians and the White Sox one might be a little bit interesting. I was looking at that, but Cards at the top of the board, and then the Royals are also drawing a pretty healthy total. And the Royals were looking kind of interesting in the model, but Detmer's not a bad pitcher overall. Yeah, David Soto, hard plays 48 minutes a game. Yeah, they asked him, what do you think's going to change if OG can't go the next game? And Hart literally said, look, I'm already playing 48 minutes and shit's going to change. I'll do what I can. But it's not like he can play more. He played all 53 minutes he played 53 minutes in the overtime game. That is, all 53 minutes. 48 plus 5. But yeah, he's been incredible. And look, I'm sure there'll be some arguments about, oh, wow, OG pulls a hammy, Brunson's got a sore foot, and these guys are playing mega minutes and so on and so forth. And maybe that's the case, maybe it's not. But these guys all played major minutes for Tibbs all season long. OG the least of them because he wasn't on the team all season, and then he was hurt for part of that. But, I mean, Josh Hart's out there doing Josh Hart things. Doesn't seem to mind playing the full game. Flying in the face of modern convention for sure. Looking at the pitching board real quick. I got to resort this because I took those other guys out. So, Sonny Gray, top of the board, I think just makes all the sense in the world. Pitching really well. A reasonably good matchup. The Brewers did get Christian Yelich back. So, it's a little bit of an improved Brewers lineup. They were kind of middle of the road. I think there's plenty of strikeouts there for Sonny Gray. We've seen over time, he's been up and down here and there. But mostly, and for the last couple of seasons, pretty consistently, a very, very high-end pitcher. 11-6, 10-8. It's a 3-game slate, so it makes sense that he's super expensive. On a bigger slate, he probably wouldn't be quite so high-priced. But I think totally reasonable at the top of the board. That said, it's not like he's crushing the projection on Reed Detmers or Ben Lively even. I don't really buy into Ben Lively yet. Not sure that's real. Eric Fede's the interesting one. He's kind of buried down here with a weak projection. It's just because of that Guardians lineup on the other side and how much they do with balls in play that it's really dinging him a little bit here. He's been good outside of a couple of spots. So I could see an upside game. I just question what the ceiling looks like given how low strikeout that Guardians team is. They've also added an interesting bat with Manzardo coming up. I could see Waka succeeding. Absolutely. I think he's not even that far off the projection for these other guys at a very cheap price. I think he's a very straightforward bargain bin guy. Lively's just got a tremendous matchup, so he's benefiting by a few fantasy points from facing the White Sox like everybody has. At 7,600, he's an obvious option in the bargain bin given the matchup on DraftKings. At 10,000 on FanDuel, I'm a lot more comfy, I think, going to one of these two guys. Or maybe even dropping down and trying to roll the dice on Fede against that Cleveland team, because I don't think he's going to be crazy popular. I don't think Lively is as good as he's been this year. It's just a question of, does that matter against this White Sox lineup, which I'm not really sure. Waka's been effective enough, and that Angels team is awful. So at the price, at 7,100, especially on DraftKings, I think that's a straightforward option out of the bargain bin. And then 7,000, totally playable in my mind on FanDuel. I don't see why not. Tobias Myers drawing up the bottom end of the board. Very cheap pricing. It is St. Louis at the highest total on the slate, but it is only 4.5 runs. Maybe a little bit contrarian, a little bit very, very cheap against a very disappointing St. Louis team that no longer has Contreras in the lineup. Not completely uninteresting. D's here. What's going on, D? Good little group of people here for the start of the game by game. Hit the like button if you get a chance if you haven't already. Subscribe if you happen to not be subscribed to the channel. I'd appreciate that. Jump into our Discord. The Discord link in the description doesn't work. Just let me know. It's also here and there on the site and everything. Discord's always free. Projections up on the site for free. Pitcher projections, hitter projections, top sacks, home run picks, power index, all the usual content. No article today for this little one. We'll knock one out for tomorrow's more complete slate. But getting into some of the game by game. Is this one first on the both 740? All right. 7:40 start tonight, by the way. A little bit later start for this three-gamer. I'm actually kind of surprised they didn't both try and go at 5 and include that Yankees-Astros game, just given the teams involved. Stretch it out to a 4-gamer. So, I want to tackle this one first. That other one's more interesting. So looking at this Cardinals-Brewers game first. Sonny Gray, again, just top of the board. Over 30 and a third in 5 starts. He's got a 33.3% strikeout rate this season with a 4.4% walk rate. He's been absolutely terrific. Yeah, 5 starts. Scared myself there for a second. I thought those pitching stats weren't updated, but they're. He's gone 6 innings, finished the 6th inning in all 4 of his most recent starts, completed 7 innings in the last start, struck out 6, walked 1, 3-hitter against those lousy White Sox. 9 strikeout game. He gave up a home run, 1 earned, and 4 total runs on 4 hits in 6 against the Mets. But again, only 1 earned run, struck out 9, walked 3. So not a complete disaster in terms of DFS results, but not a great overall start. Obviously, a little bit shaky there, but ended up with the W with the quality start. Against the Brewers, this same Brewers team, he struck out 12 back on the 21st. Gave up 2 earned on 5 hits, but went 6 and a third, so he pitched into the 7th inning in that one. So I think we're looking at reasonable expectations of depth for Sonny Gray. He hasn't been walking anybody this season, pitching to a 0.89 ERA, a 2.25 xFIP, the 12.8% swinging strike rate. The CSW is terrific. Both up a little bit from last season. The walks are way down. The strikeouts are way, way up. You can see that Stuff Plus doesn't really love the Sonny Gray arsenal. At least in this small sample, 5% or 5 points below average across the entire arsenal. But a couple pitches, I haven't checked it directly, but I'm confident there's at least 1 or 2 pitches in his arsenal that are above average pitches. That said, I expect the strikeout rate to come down a bit. I think the walk rate goes up a little bit, and he kind of normalizes back to, more this level of still very, very good pitcher. But this would be a major leap kind of later in the career for Sonny Gray. Does that mean he can't absolutely succeed? Strike out 8-10 of these Brewers again? Absolutely. That's on the table for him, for sure. Like I said, you do get Christian Yelich back in the lineup. And by the way, I think a more reasonable expectation is 6-7 strikeouts, somewhere in there. But still, top of the board. Yelich back in the lineup does help out the Brewers a little bit. They've got William Contreras hitting second in the projected lineup. He's been terrific all season. Bryce Turang projected to hit leadoff. Willy Adames in the 4th spot. I don't mind that as a little 4-man group. And then probably I'm skipping Sal Frelick and popping Rhys Hoskins in there just for the power. And I'm looking for a little bit of run creation there with one of these 2 guys knocking it in and then either doing something individually or getting on ahead of Hoskins. Maybe get Frelick on ahead of Hoskins outside the stack. Frelick's basically good for hit tool, on base, stolen bases, and correlated scoring. He's done a little bit of that this season. 326 on base. He's stolen 4 bags. Just an 87 WRC plus, though. Only 250, 326, 306. No homers. Not an ideal 5th bat in the lineup. Like, I would probably put Perkins there, the switch hitter. Let Frelick hit down here. They want somebody who can hit from the left side of the plate, so it's not a full run of righties right there in the heart of the lineup. Otherwise, they'd be saying, maybe you give Churio a shot to hit there. But I think they want the lefty. So I would go Perkins. Perkins has been good to start the season. He's creating runs 18% better than average. He's getting on at a 347 clip, 4 home runs, 3 steals. So he's less interesting down here, but he's still very, very playable. 4,300, 3,400 across sites. You do want to include and consider a lot of these guys from the bottom of the lineup on a three gamer, more so I think than on full slates, just because. And again, we're never ruling these guys out on full slates, but even more so just because they do tend to be a little bit less popular as everybody focuses on 1 through 5. So mixing them in helps differentiate lineups while sticking with the same, popular stacks or the popularity that's going to be threaded throughout the entire slate. But I do think that Perkins, if he jumps up to this spot in the lineup or here or wherever, a lot more interesting up there just overall, baseball-wise. A lot more opportunity to get an extra plate appearance, score some runs, correlate with the guys that you truly want. Oliver Dunn, just kind of a mixed option. He's 2,500 on FanDuel, 3,400. I don't love putting him at third base. 25 on FanDuel at second base if you have to, but not really a high priority option. He is hitting the ball hard, 47.8% hard hits over 83 plate appearances. You give him that much, but he's striking out at a 37.3% clip. He's at 221, 277. He's 27% worse than average for run creation. Bit problematic. Jackson Chourio, all the talent in the world, but he's 26% worse than average creating runs so far. 4 homers, 6 steals in his 122 plate appearances. Starting to get days off here and there, and they're just kind of going with a little bit more consistency in spots. But that was yesterday. I expect him in the lineup today. He's been hitting down this way, so 8-9 wherever he is playable. 3,600, 2,900 for the raw skills is definitely on the board as a value play, and especially if you're stacking Brewers and building a bunch of Brewer stacks, you're going to want to have Chourio. It's just we haven't seen much. It's not a great spot in the lineup. Turang off the top, 14 steals, a 382 on base, 38% better than average creating runs. He's been terrific so far this year. Contreras, again, one of the best hitting catchers in baseball. Dynamite spot in the lineup. I think you can grab him as a one-off with stacks from the other games if you want to. Yelich at 49.37, underpriced on DraftKings. 37 even is a little bit low on FanDuel. He was mashing before he went out. 13.9% barrels, 50% hard hits in his 51 plate appearances. He had 5 home runs already on the season, a 364 ISO. Several years ago, Christian Yelich with the power. We'll see what it normalizes to, but he's never, ever stopped hitting the ball hard. Even as home runs have declined, always just crushes the ball. So Yelich can always be in my lineup. He's got power. He's got speed. He's got good, doubles level powered, good extra base power if he's not hitting home runs. Willy Adames at shortstop at 4,500 on DraftKings, also a little bit cheap. 7 home runs, 6 steals. Creating runs 29% better than average over 160. He's always hit for power. Not a consistent guy, but 35 on FanDuel is probably more correct than 45 on DraftKings. Interesting enough player. And then I mentioned Hoskins before, but I didn't talk about him. 7 home runs on the season, a 218 ISO, 119 WRC+. Never going to be great in the front end of the triple slash, but makes tremendous contact. Striking out at just a 20.9% clip, 10.8% walk, so he's not an abomination when it comes to strikeouts. So I like Hoskins there, and again, I would probably skip over Frelick if it's him in that spot. I would go Perkins there and make a more dynamic top 6 if I was the Brewers. On the Card side, they're going up against Tobias Myers. Myers has made 3 starts. He went just 3 innings in his last start. That was at Wrigley against the Cubs. 2 strikeouts, 4 walks, 2 homers, 4 earned runs on 3 hits, 3 innings pitched. 5 innings in each of the first 2, struck out 5, struck out 4. That was against the Yanks in Milwaukee and then against the Pirates in Pittsburgh. Gave up 2 home runs in the Yankee game also. 4 earned on 5 hits in that one, went 5 innings. Struck out 5, walked 0. Struck out 4, walked 1, gave up 1 home run, just 1 earned on 4 hits in 5 innings at Pittsburgh. So in the 3 starts, he's given up 5 home runs. That's how you get to a 9.09% home run rating. Stuff Plus doesn't like his arsenal really at all. 10 points below average. 6.23 ERA with a 4.66 xFIP, a 9.1% walk, and a 20% strikeout in the very small sample. 12.8% barrels allowed so far. Has given up a ton of premium contact. We don't have any other sample there. Let's see what he's done. Just because we've got a sec. I know we looked at him the other day too, but I forget. 3 starts in AAA this year, had a 1.62 ERA and a 3.12 xFIP. Pitching at age 25 in AAA. That also came with a 32.8% strikeout and a 10.4% walk. Very small sample also, obviously. 137 and 2/3 innings in AA last year, pitching at 24 in AA. That's not great. 5.03 ERA and a 3.94 xFIP. xFIP's better than the ERA there. Had a 28.7% strikeout rate, 7.7% walk. But again, that's pitching in AA at a more advanced age. Can't really see all that much to cling to here. No good grades in traditional scouting. There's really, outside of just being contrarian in the bargain bin, going up against the team with the highest run total of the day, there's really not much reason to play Tobias Myers here. That is why you would do it. The path to success is pretty thin, but not impossible. If he gives you 5, if he gives you the game that you got against Pittsburgh, you're fine. If he gives you one of the other two, you're obviously completely lost. So it really comes down to that. I don't think there's much ceiling beyond a 4 or 5 strikeout game where he gives up a run or two and maybe lasts 5 innings. So really shaky spot, even at the price. Cards on the other side, again, they've been super disappointing all season long. You can see it right in the WRC plus numbers. Only Arenado, who hasn't been good for power, but has been hitting and getting on base a little bit, and Alec Burleson at 102 over 89 plate appearances. Only those two guys at a positive WRC plus right now. Wilson Contreras was also playing really well. He would have been right up here at a positive WRC plus, but he's out of the lineup. He got his arm fractured the other day on a swing, so that's going to take him out for a while. Brendan Donovan, Lars Nootbaar off the top. Both good players. Donovan typically a better bat-on-ball player than he's been so far this season. He's been hitting for a little bit of power. 4 home runs, just a 158 ISO and 97 WRC plus. Doesn't seem like he's all that far off. The strikeouts and the walks are right around where they should be. He does have a 40% hard hit rate, right in line with what it was last year before he got injured. 7.5% barrels is up a little bit. So I don't think we're far off the mark with Donovan. I think he'll be fine ultimately. 2,900 for 4 positions on FanDuel is interesting. 4,200 just as another everyday outfielder. Probably going to be popular if that's where he's hitting in the Cards lineup. It's not as great as being able to just bounce him around to a bunch of different positions at a fair value price on FanDuel, but definitely playable in card stacks as their leadoff hitter. Nootbaar, definitely better than he's been. 2 homers, 2 steals in his 96 plate appearances. Sub Mendoza, 295 ISO and 83 WRC plus. Last year, 14 homers, 11 steals in 503 plate appearances / 261, 367, 418. Creator runs 18% better than average. That's Lars Nootbaar. Solid lefty bat. 3,900, 2,700 in the outfield. If you're deciding between these two as just another outfielder, I would probably take the discount. Just go to Lars Nootbaar at 39 rather than Donovan. I do think he's the better of the two players. Projects out a little bit better mark in the home run model, making better contact in a small sample. Goldschmidt, 40.9% hard hits is what we're clinging to right now. .068 ISO, 2 home runs, a stolen base, 35% worse than average creating runs. It's been bad over 152 for Paul Goldschmidt. Hasn't been that much better for Arenado, at least not in the contact and the power department. 2.6% barrels, 28.7% hard hits. Just 2 homers for him. Up to a 103 ISO now, but just 287, 351, 390. This and this are keeping him alive right now. He's not driving the ball really at all. He doesn't strike out, so he's putting a lot of balls in play. He's creating runs on a positive level. But he hasn't been all that great. He does seem like he's coming around a little bit, though. He's been hitting a little bit more, driving the ball a little bit more in, let's say, the last week. So hopefully catching on a little bit. Burleson, 43.9% hard hits in his small sample. He's got 3 home runs, 2% above average for run creation. He got 8 plate appearances out of Dylan Carlson so far. He's gone over. Negative 100 WRC plus in the small sample. He was at 16% below average over 255 last year, 5 home runs, 3 steals. Year before, dead on average, 8 home runs, 5 steals, and 488 plate appearances. Not like super appealing. He's playable in stacks, but pretty much I would assume at 2,500, 2,400, especially if this is where he's hitting in the lineup, probably for his talent level, maybe a little over-owned. Seems like this Cards team is going to be popular. Mason Wynn, 31-28, down to 99 WRC plus, cooled off a little bit after a good start to the season. A reasonably good player. I think around this average, maybe between 320 and 340 on base for the season. We'll see if he hits for any power. He's stolen 5 bases. If he continues to get on base and do good things at the plate, probably ends up stealing 20 plus bases and maybe a little bit above average for run creation when it's all said and done. But hasn't barreled the ball yet. 27.8% hard hits. Doesn't strike out a ton, draw some walks, but not really a premium DFS option. Maybe it would be more interesting ahead of the teams like Power Core here. You do have Nolan Gorman down here, still making okay contact with 11.1% barrels, but just 34.7% hard hits in the 125 plate appearances. Just a 149 ISO, 4 homers, 65 WRC plus. Been kind of problematic so far. And then Ivan Herrera, the catcher, probably going to be the full-time catcher at this point. 3 home runs on the board in 76 plate appearances. Is a guy who's been a high-on prospect over time, partly for his defense, But he was once upon a time he's going to be the heir apparent to Yadi Molina. Then that became to Wilson Contreras, and we'll see where it goes from here. But right now, he's going to get a full-time shot. He is a cheap catcher. I could see him hitting up in this territory, and he's much more interesting if he's hitting up, higher than 6. In the 9 spot, not quite as interesting, but he has put bat on ball pretty effectively so far this season. So not somebody to rule out. Definitely, if he is unpopular in a popular stack, it's an interesting angle to take. He's not expensive. I'm not even going to do the yes-no outside of just saying Sonny Gray, top pitching projection on the board, most expensive pitcher. And again, not a ton of daylight between him and Detmers or even Ben Lively against that White Sox team. I think you could argue more projection for Sonny Gray if you wanted to. It wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world to have him higher. See how this little lineup is doing. Yeah, Mikey Conforto home run. Doesn't look like the Colorado-San Francisco game stack is going to pay off, though. Not with the Twins going out and scoring 10 runs. That was the last time I saw it. 11 now. Whew. Logan Gilbert, total meltdown on the afternoon slate. Twins have 11 runs, and I think at least 8 of them came against Gilbert. Messy. So let's talk Ben Lively. As I said, for 7,600 against this White Sox team, he's obvious and probably going to be crazy chalk and very, very popular on the DraftKings slate. On the FanDuel slate at 10,000, it's a weird price fit because I don't think he's this guy. Stuff Plus also doesn't think he's this guy. 28.6% strikeouts over 21 2/3, 4 starts. He's walked 7.1%, 208 ERA, but a 3.32 xFIP. This is still very good, the 3.32 xFIP, but it's not quite as good. It's revealing about that, 1.3 runs higher. He's given up just a couple of home runs. It's 2 home runs that came in his first 2 starts. Both of those were against Boston and a home and home. He struck out 7 in both of those. So he's only given up the 2 home runs in 4 games, but he's given up a 42.6% hard hit rate, well over 90 miles an hour of exit velo. Well, 0.8 miles an hour over, but on this scale, that's well over. 7.4% barrels on a fly ball trajectory. And again, Stuff Plus down way below average. I don't really think that this is a special pitcher by any means. Last year, in 77 innings, 18 starts. Excuse me, no, that's 2022. 77 innings, 18 starts. Pitching as a 30-year-old in AAA. He put up a 4.09 ERA with a 4.51 xFIP and had a 23.7% strikeout rate. Again, as a 30-year-old pitching in AAA, that's after he came back from the KBO, by the way. He was in the KBO in 2020 and 2021. He worked 112 innings and 21 starts in 2020 in the KBO, pitched to a 4.26 ERA and a 4.54 xFIP with a 19.9% strikeout rate in the KBO. He only worked 33 and a third innings. The next year, he had a 27.1% strikeout rate in that tiny sample in that abbreviated KBO season, but that's nothing to get excited about. Last year, again with Cincinnati, 6 starts in the minors, 32 2/3 in AAA, 4.68 ERA, a 5.60 xFIP. Struck out just 16.4. Then he came up to the show. He made 12 starts, appeared in 19 games through 88 2/3 innings with Cincinnati last year, and came away with a 20.6% strikeout rate, a 5.38 ERA with a 4.42 xFIP. I just can't imagine that magically Ben Lively became a really good pitcher at age 32. It just seems like a little bit of happenstance over his first few games. Again, the first 2 were against the Red Sox. 7 strikeouts in both. Just 1 walk across the 2 starts. Gave up a homer in both of them. 2 earned runs in the first one on 3 hits. 1 earned run in the second one on 5 hits. He worked 6 1/3 in that game, too. Only went 5 in the first start. Then at Atlanta in his third start of the year, he only worked 4 1/3. 5 strikeouts, 2 walks, just 1 earned run on 4 hits. Wasn't a disaster, but didn't work deep into the game. 5 strikeouts, 3 walks, and earned run on 4 hits over 6 against the Angels. It seems like it's already started to dip a little bit, given the the downturn in strikeouts over those two and the uptick in walks over those two. It's just a lot of, I really don't think that this has been lively. So I'm not, in a lot of shares, I do think you have to have a significant enough position. Like if you're building 150 lineups, or if you're building like, let's say 50 for a big MMA contest, you do want to have a fair share of Ben Lively even on FanDuel at the price, just given the matchup. There's a lot of people in the world that could succeed against this White Sox team. I'm not one of them. I don't think I can throw more than 70 miles an hour, but there's a lot of people in the world that can. Your average high school pitcher might have a shot against this team. That said, I am seeing a good amount of power here for the White Sox. And as I mentioned at the top of the show, I don't think that a White Sox Guardians game stack is uninteresting on this slate. I think game stacks in general are interesting on 3-gamers. At 76 on DraftKings, I think Lively is both necessary and probable to be very, very popular. Does also lend cause to maybe stacking up some White Sox on the other side if he does become the most popular value play, which just makes all the sense in the world that he would be. So with the White Sox showing a little bit of power, I'm not uninterested in Eloy Jimenez, Gavin Sheets. Andrew Vaughn a little bit less so just because he's been so bad. But he is showing a little bit of pop, 10.66. He's over the magic number for home run upside. It's just his barrels and his hard hits have kind of abandoned him in his first 142 this season. He's striking out more. He's walking a little bit more, but that doesn't really matter here. He's at 192, 254, 246. He's been 55% worse than average for run creation. He's yet to homer, a .054 ISO. And he's never really translated into an extreme amount of game power. 21 homers on a 171 ISO last year, 17 homers and a 159 ISO the year before. Doesn't really back up the contact he makes with results, which is a little bit odd. Kind of defies the good contact that he's made so far. And without that, he's just been nothing at the plate this year. So even with that number, I'm happy to skip him, especially if I'm building a game stack with the other side of this one, because I'm going to want both Kyle Manzardo and Josh Naylor at first base and util on FanDuel. Unfortunately for DraftKings, you're positionally blocked with those two players, which totally sucks. 2,100 for Manzardo is really interesting on DraftKings. Their top prospect, one of the top prospects in baseball with the bat. He was tearing up the minors. He's made 8 plate appearances in the show so far. Hasn't done anything yet, but give him time. 2,100 is a terrific price for him. 25 on FanDuel is also a terrific price. But the point there is I'm happy to skip Andrew Vaughn, especially in game stacks, because I want 2 first basemen from the other side, or at least one of them. I think Tommy Pham is interesting if you're looking at the White Sox. 4,000, 3,100. He's at 295, 326, 477. He's hit 2 home runs, 127 WRC plus over what's just 46 plate appearances. But he was good last year and has been good over time. We know Tommy Pham's a good baseball player. But he kind of had a little bounce back, 16 homers, 22 steals, created runs 10% above average last year over 481. Year before, 17 homers, 8 steals in 622. So he's been effective when he's getting chances, and he's got a perfect opportunity here with the White Sox, and he hits ahead of the 2 hitters that I really want. The question is, do you stretch this stack out to a 4th guy or a 4th and a 5th guy if you're playing on DraftKings? I think on a 3-gamer, you can mix and match your way through, so it's not out of the question to just take these 3 guys. They'll probably be the most popular guys among people who do go to this White Sox team. You've got Nicky Lopez just as a straightforward correlated scoring play, just hitting ahead of those guys at a very cheap price. Triple position eligible on FanDuel. Second base is fine on DraftKings. That said, hasn't done anything at all this season. Wasn't very good last year. Wasn't very good the year before. So buyer beware with Nicky Lopez is just the person who happens to be occupying that position in the lineup. Benintendi's been really bad this year. Sub Mendoza for Benintendi. If he's not hitting for average, then he's just worthless. He does have 3 home runs, but a .093 ISO, a 43 WRC+. Paul DeJong's been a little bit frisky. He's got 5 home runs, over 102 plate appearances, a 229 ISO, 111 WRC+, 10.3% barrels and 44.8% hard hits from a guy who did used to hit for power pretty regularly. So that's probably my 4th man in. 1, 2, 3. Skip down to 4. Corey Lee, Braden Shoemake. I can make a case for Corey Lee if you're playing on DraftKings at 35 as a catcher and you want the full 5-man of this team. He's got 3 home runs, 273, 314, 455, creating runs 17% better than average. Shoemake, kind of irrelevant at the bottom of the lineup. He does have 5 steals. A dead-on 0 WRC+. Exactly 100% worse than average. They might as well have gone with an 8-man lineup instead of playing Braden Shoemaker every one of those 60 plate appearances. I don't recall ever seeing anybody dead on 0. I've seen negatives. We got a negative right here. Speaking of weird negative stats, did you see Mason Miller with over whatever he's pitched so far, the Oakland closer? He's incredible. Loved him as a potential starting pitching prospect last year, and then the elbow blew out and he became a closer. But he's got a negative, I think, 0.16 FIP. Not XFIP, but FIP on the season. I got it right here. He's got a 1.10 ERA and a negative 0.160 FIP. So as I said, he's been so good that the league owes him part of a run. How does this game look weather-wise? Good question, Larry. As I guaranteed on Twitter, we're covering half the games in twice the time, as our pal Ship My Money did on his show. I got a chance to check that out earlier. Jumped into his chat for a couple of minutes and watched him do his thing. Check him out. Seems like he and Brick and a couple other guys are about to launch something too, so it seems pretty interesting over there. But Adam's a good dude, so check out his show too. But yeah, half the game's in twice the time, as you know. Cleveland, Chicago. So it does look like there's some rain coming through. Seems like Roth likes it as a late start briefly and play in light. Ross said, I'm going to just direct quote it. Moderate rainfall early, light rain later tonight. I think they either late start briefly and play in light rain or late start for a while and play dry. So either way, it does seem like he likes it to play. Seems like there's a good window, whichever way you wanted to do that. If you're playing some weird slate that has that Yankees game on it, it is supposed to be some drizzle and some rain through the evening here, but right now in Jersey City, about an hour ahead of game time, pretty dry. So yeah, I'd say some potential concern here. Hey, Carlos Soto, what's going on, pal? Good to see you. The worst case scenario though would be, as usual, outside of obviously a start and then called for rain. The worst case scenario for me is having the pitching, especially on a short slate like this, and getting a start and stop. That's where it's really a problem. So with what seems like, at least per Roth, seems like some window of opportunity to game, when they want to play and the conditions in which they want to play, seems like we're good. But I would say definitely keep an eye on it. Don't just blindly throw in lineups and don't come back to them later. The Eric Fedde side of this, he's overall pitching pretty well. I think he's more believable, certainly, than Ben Lively. Went over to the KBO himself and I believe won their version of the Cy Young over there. Came back. He had a clunker in his last start, and he had one other start that was a little bit shaky on the season, but overall has been pretty effective and has spiked a couple big upside games. So in the last start against St. Louis, one of the lowest scoring teams in the league, he only struck out 2. He walked 5, gave up a homer and 5 earned runs on 4 hits, only lasted 4 1/3 in that one. That was coming off of an 8 1/3 inning start. So he pitched into the 9th against Tampa Bay the start before. Maybe just a little tiredness, leading to ineffectiveness. Also could just have reverted back to who Eric Fedde used to be. So there is that we can, worry about if we want to. But in that 8 1/3 inning start, he faced 32 hitters. He struck out 9. He gave up a home run, but only 2 earned runs. He did give up 7 hits, though. So was effective, but kind of like in a compiling way. It's not like he was breezing through guys to get to that 9 strikeout total. He faced 32 hitters. It's a lot of hitters. Game before that, he was a lot better. 11 strikeouts. He only faced 21 hitters in that game over 6. 11 strikeouts, no walks. Gave up 1 earned on 3 hits over 6. That was at Minnesota. I right in when Minnesota was going on their run on the 23rd. That's not that far back. Yeah, Minnesota's run started on like the 15th. So that's against the enhanced version of that Minnesota team. Struck out 5 over 5 and 2/3 against Kansas City. So by and large, he's pitching fairly deep into games. First couple were shorter starts, but the last few have been deeper, except for the one they ran into trouble against St. Louis. I think he's very cheap at 85, 89. My main concern is just, what's going on with the low strikeouts in the Guardians lineup. Ignore this 25%, by the way. That's got a 62.5 from Manzardo in it. It does have Bo Naylor there at 36. It's got Estevan Florial all the way up at 37.5. But a lot of the key hitters in this lineup, those middle 5 guys, that's a 14% strikeout rate this year, and the same group of guys was 14.6% last year. And you add Brian Rocchio down at the bottom. Last year, Rocchio was at 31.4. This year, he's at 18.3. Truth is probably somewhere in the middle. He's also not a threatening hitter. He's mostly here for his defense at shortstop. But at least it is a lower strikeout guy there. There's a Manzardo. We'll see what he becomes. Bo Naylor was only at 23% last year. He's flailing a little bit this year at 36.9. And even Florial, 28.2, and if memory serves, he's typically in that neighborhood in the minors. 37.5 is a little bit high. But the point being, the key bats in this lineup are all low strikeout. We know that they're station-to-station focused, but now they've got, with the addition of Manzardo, they've got Bo Naylor, a couple lefty power bats late in the lineup. They've got Josh Naylor, obviously hitting for a decent amount of power with 9 home runs on the season. They've got Jose Ramirez, their star, who has been underperforming so far this year, but is terrific overall. And then Florial at the top has a little bit of power. He's been barreling the ball, racking up a lot of hard hits. Hasn't been really successful so far. But a 208 ISO is interesting. 3 home runs, a little bit of speed out of the leadoff spot. Doesn't get on base well, so he's not an ideal fit in the leadoff spot. But for DFS, he's cheap. He's a lefty. Fits in above Jimenez, Ramirez, Naylor. It's an interesting player at the top of this lineup if that's where he hits. Jimenez at 5,200, 3,000. One of the best. Is he the best second baseman on this slate? He probably is. What's the other game? Yeah, he's the best second baseman on this slate. So he's kind of interesting. 5,200, 3,000. He's got a home run, 5 stolen bases. We know he's got a slight bit more pop than that. When he's getting on, he's happy to run. He's creating runs 3% worse than average, despite an okay start. He's cooled off a little bit in terms of the triple slash. But a good player, good hitter, low strikeout option who doesn't walk all that much, puts the ball in play a fair amount. Just hasn't really been crushing the ball. Didn't really crush the ball last year either. Year before was a little bit better for premium contact. So if we get back to anything like this level of hard hits, he's a more interesting player. But I do think he's a really effective table setter ahead of Ramirez, Naylor. If you want to stack up the middle of this lineup, you just focus on some of the low strikeout guys. Will Brennan, been up and down, 4 home runs, 2 steals, and 94 WRC plus, a 170 ISO, solidly in the middle results-wise, but is highly regarded for his hit tool, and that's what hasn't really been on display, just a 240 average and a 287 on base. Some decent hard hits over his 108 plate appearances. Reason to believe. I've talked about him a couple times already. Was one of their top prospects just a few years ago. Only striking out at a 13.9% clip. Again, another guy putting a lot of balls in play. Oh, sorry, Freeman. Freeman 17.6 and 7.6%. Did I do that whole one on the wrong line? I think I did. Freeman was at 3 home runs, 4 steals. I was just doing Will Brennan. I skipped up a line. So Freeman's been even a little bit worse than that. 136 ISO, 81 WRC plus. But the same thing applies about the hard hit. What I was saying about his hit tool is true. Hasn't really arrived yet in even worse ways. And he's fairly low strikeout. Same thing across the board is true for Will Brennan, with maybe a little bit more of believability from last year. 266 average last year, but just 299 on base, just a .090 ISO, 5 home runs and 13 steals in 455. Just a cup of coffee the year before that. Manzardo at 21, again, really interesting. In the minors this year, he had 9 home runs and 128 plate appearances at AAA. Last year in 313 in Tampa Bay's AAA system, I had 11, and then he added 6 in just 92 plate appearances with Cleveland at AAA last year. So a premium power bat Kid who's regarded as a very good hitter. He's not like a 40 home run guy, but a solid average, solid, ability to drive the ball. Should have a good ISO over time. Should be good for hard hits. And 22 to 28 home runs, in his prime. Somewhere in that territory. So I think it's an interesting spot to game stack. I think you're getting both pitchers, obviously. Lively is uncomfortable at 10,000. I don't really think there's much there other than the quality matchup against the worst team in baseball, but we are seeing some good power numbers for those guys. So if you want to go to White Sox as a contrarian play against what should be a popular Lively, especially at the DraftKings price, I think it's maybe worth doing at least in as few shares and definitely as a hedge position if you take a lot of Lively. I think Fetty's going to be popular at a solid mid-range price, even against this Guardians team. I'm a little bit skeptical about what the strikeout upside might look like. I could definitely see Fetty go and pop a little bit here, and the projections didn't really like him against this team. So I'm skeptical about both pitchers, but I think they're both in play, and then I think both lineups are in play. It's a 3-game slate. Kind of got to get to everything. Colorado just went nuts. 7 runs in the 4th inning. Well, that's helpful, maybe. Maybe that game stack will get there. Like I said, I like game stacks for little 3-gamers. Well, a lot of time left. We got a nice score going. But still well behind the leaders. Need something out of the Giants side of that one now. Still only the 4th inning, though. A lot of time. A lot of baseball left in that one. Last game up here. Not a lot of show left. I mean, what did I just do? Like a half hour on that last game? So maybe there is a lot of show left. Michael Wacha checking in at 7,000 going up against another really, really bad lineup. You do have some interesting guys. Like, this is now a lineup filled with young guys who just kind of missed. Mickey Moniak, former first overall pick, kind of missed. Just trying to find his footing in the majors and is getting a full opportunity. Willie Calhoun, former top prospect, kind of never arrived. Kind of scuffled anytime he's gotten a major league appearance outside of a few weeks here and there. Cole Tucker, similar. Joe Adell, definitely on that list. He's been mashing. Zach Neto was called up too early. Same thing with Nolan Shanuel. Neither one of them got enough seasoning in the minors. They were both decent draft picks. It's just a really weird team because it's not like they're necessarily up and coming. You're not looking at them like the Orioles last year, like, damn, when all these kids get going, this is going to be good. This is like a bunch of post-hype guys. It's really weird. It's like they're kind of trying to do what the Rays did, but they're just not good at it. Where they just get a bunch of post-hype guys and just, turn them around. The Rays are really good at that. Angels so far haven't really been. They're not good at developing their own talent. They're not good at rehabilitating other people's talent. So I definitely think you can look at Wacha here. Just an 18.9% strikeout rate over 7 starts, 37 2/3, a 5.50 ERA with a 4.10 xFIP. But he's not getting burnt for premium contact or home runs, which is really the only thing the Angels can throw at you. 87.3 miles an hour of exit velo, 36.4% hard hits on a 6.6% barrel, 2.44% home runs. This is not a pitcher that anything likes. Right? There's no measurement by which we're going to say, oh, wow, look at Michael Wacha. He's so good. 87.88 by Stuff Plus. But I think every starter on this slate is below average by Stuff Plus. Yes. Ooh, Eric Fedde screwing me up right at league average, 100.94. Because, Sonny Gray was, and so was Tobias Myers. Just an interesting little wrinkle there. But Wacha, not respected for the makeup of the arsenal. Over time, 22.4% strikeouts last year in 134 1/3 over 24 starts, and 127 1/3 over 23 starts the year before. 20.2% strikeout. Gave up a little bit more barrels, a little bit more home runs that year. Hard hits were still in line. Exit velo was fine. Same here. So a little bit of a happenstance in that 3.50. But I think you can consider for the season, reliably between like 2.4 and 3.5 as the range. 3.32 ERA that year, but a 3.99 xFIP, a 3.22 ERA with a 4.47 xFIP. You can see some consistent patterns. Always going to be putting guys on base. Actually, these weren't terrible. 1.12, 1.16 whip. That's not bad. This year it's at 1.46, despite a better walk rate. So actually, maybe he's gotten a little bit BABIP'd there. But again, we would not be talking about Michael Wacha in any real serious terms against a lot of other teams on a lot of other slates. Last time out, he faced Texas. He struck out 3, walked 1, gave up 7 earned runs on 9 hits over 3 2/3. 5 2/3 against the Tigers at Detroit. Before that, struck out just 3, walked 0, but gave up 2 home runs, 4 earned runs on 9 hits. 4 strikeouts, 3 walks, just 2 earned on 8 hits over 4 1/3 against Toronto. This is what we're dealing with on this slate. Very low end for strikeouts, but this Angels team could give you a couple upside strikeouts. Last year, this group of hitters was at 25.2 in a mixed sample size, and so far this year, 23.5. So it's a gettable bunch. You could see a little bit of a additional strikeout upside. His season high is 8. He did that over 7 innings against a similarly bad White Sox team. That was his best start of the year. He struck out 8, walked 1, no earned runs on just 2 hits over 7 innings. His deepest start of the year, highest strikeout total, cleanest game of the year. I could see a repeat performance of that for 7,100, 7,000. Projects out just fine. Absolutely can get beat in this spot. Absolutely can turn in a mediocre. He struck out 3, but he gave up 4 earned runs. Didn't get the quality start, even though he went 6 kind of a game. Or worse. Reed Detmers at 9,600, 8,700 projects out really well. It is a frisky Royals team, though. It's not a team I love targeting. They were sitting at a 4.41 implied total. So it's not like Vegas is telling us that they're, easily gettable here. Detmers has a 4.24 ERA, a 3.58 xFIP. He struck out 26.7%, one of the better strikeout rates available. 13.4 swinging is great. 29.5% CSW is nice. Giving up a few barrels, a little bit of hard hit, but not egregious there. Hasn't resulted in too many home runs. Last year, similar strikeout rate, higher walk rate. He's always going to be walking a few too many, putting a few too many guys on base. But he's good at inducing swinging strikes. He can punch his way out of trouble when he puts guys on base on the right night. Not a top-end pitcher. Maybe solid third-tier type pitcher. If Reed Detmers is your 3 starter, rather have him probably as my 4. But he's all right. Season high for strikeouts was 12. That was a dynamite game. He walked 1. He gave up 1 earned run on 3 hits. That was against Boston. That was all the way back on April 6th. Struck out 7 of those same Red Sox in basically a repeat performance in the next game over 6 1/3. Last time out, over 5 2/3, he struck out 7 Guardians, which in itself is an accomplishment. But he gave up 3 home runs. He walked 4. He gave up 7 earned runs on 5 hits over 5 2/3. Which is not great. 5 earned runs the game before that, 4 earned runs the game before that one. He does work deep into games. Completed the 6th one 3 times and pitched into it 2 other times. Pitched into the 7th 2 of those times. So if we're looking for depth, if we're looking for strikeout opportunity, if we're looking for, on a short slate, just a little bit of talent, I think Reed Detmers is a clear number 2 to Sonny Gray. It's just, he's probably going to be popular. And I do like that Royals team on the other side, and Vegas likes him to find some runs. So it's a little shaky. If you're looking at the Royals, Michael Garcia off the top, 293 on base. We're going to continue harping on this. 235 average, 293 on base, 376 slug. Just an 86 WRC plus. Does have 4 homers, does have 8 steals, hits the ball squarely. Only striking out at an 18.8% clip, walking 7.9. I do think there's a player here. I just don't think there's a leadoff hitter here. But especially as long as they continue to do it, it just makes him interesting for DFS because he correlates directly with these guys. He's cheap enough. He's viable at third base considering there is power upside. There's stolen base upside to pad some DFS scoring. Totally fine with it. It's just a weird spot in the everyday real life lineup. Bobby Witt, 63.43, the most expensive player I think on the entire slate. Position player. 5 home runs, 13 stolen bases at 245 ISO, creating runs 65% better than average. Looking a whole hell of a lot like Bobby Witt out there. Hitting the ball a little bit harder so far this year. He's been tremendous. He is tremendous. No reason to skip Bobby Witt under any circumstances. Totally viable as a one-off in stacks from other games. Totally viable if you just want to grab 9 random players and play them. Definitely a high priority bat. Vinny Pasquantino, 45-29. Have I raved? Are you guys on board with Vinny yet? Have I raved about him enough? I know I've been harping on this, and I know it's only been mediocre results so far. 4 home runs, a 176 ISO, but 13% better than average creating runs. Batting average is on its way up, so is the on base. He's striking out at a 9.5% clip, guys. Last year, that was 11.9% over a full sample. He walks a lot, so he's getting on base. But what we really love is the low strikeouts combined with this contact profile. Last year was a bit of a dip, but 2 years ago, 8.8% barrels, 46.9% hard hits. I forget how many plate appearances that was. It was a couple hundred, I think. 298. He hit 10 home runs in that sample, 295, 383, 450. Created runs 37% better than average. Dipped last year to 247, 324, 437. Only hit 9 home runs. Had a 190 ISO because he does square the ball up like crazy. And this year the contact has been back in the small sample. 8.7% barrels, 47.8% hard hits. Looks a lot like this. And when you're doing it with this kind of frequency in terms of just putting bat on ball, these results are going to go up. There's just no argument to make that they won't. Outside of he's just the unluckiest player in baseball. Even with good results so far, or mixed, moderate results so far, I'm sure this BABIP is low. 243 BABIP. A lot of atom balls out of Vinny. Needs to elevate the ball a little bit more so that he can find some more home runs. I'd love to see a 10-plus barrel rate out of Vinny. But a very good player for the money. 4,500, 2,900, and a killer spot in the lineup. Sal Perez, 5,300, 3,500. He's got 8 homers, a 233 ISO, 161 WRC+. Killer bat. If you get a weird day where it's like, Freddie Fermin in there, who's in the projected lineup, and Sal gets a day off or anything like that, because he has been, up and down for a couple injuries already this season. Hasn't missed extended time, but he's gotten knocked around a little bit and been banged up behind the plate a little bit. But assuming Sal's in his everyday spot, he's a killer option. Premium contact galore, hitting for average and getting on base and creating runs. And we're always looking for home runs out of him. Nelson Velasquez, Hunter Renfroe. If you get MJ Melendez, he's interesting, but probably won't against the lefty. They'll probably go righty heavy like this lineup is stacked up. Velasquez has been stuck at 2 home runs and everything else declining around that number so far. 77 WRC plus over 108 plate appearances. He's very cheap for the power upside, though. Put great bat on ball last year. In a small sample, 179 plate appearances. He hit 17 home runs. That's crazy. Freddie Fermin, a little bit of pop from the catcher position. 9.9% barrels and 42.7% hard hits last year over 235. Resulted in 9 home runs, a decent triple slash. Not an unplayable catcher option. Second catcher option. You get Sal at first base if you want him, but then you're skipping Vinny. Hunter Renfroe's been a mess so far this year. 120 ISO, 3 home runs, 38 WRC plus, an abysmal triple slash. Deron Blanco is definitely interesting for speed. He's stolen 8 bases in just 30 plate appearances. That was 8 in fewer plate appearances the other day. Last year, 24 steals and 138 while getting on at a 324 clip. When he's in the lineup at very, very low prices, just given that stolen base upside, if he's on, he's got the green light kind of stolen base upside. Not uninteresting. Garrett Hampson, not all that interesting from the last spot. He is dead min, though, at 4 positions on FanDuel. There's value just inherently in being that, right? Just to have the min price, it's just free square. So even though he's not good, you can definitely deploy that. Second base and outfield, it's the better of the positions for him probably on DK at 22. So it's basically the same thing, just a little bit more effective on FanDuel for that. If you do go to this Angels lineup, your best players, Taylor Ward for sure, probably Willie Calhoun, and then probably Joe Adell, maybe Logan O'Hoppe. Yeah, it's probably Logan O'Hoppe in that list. So Ward at 54.33, the most expensive player, the only, even arguably expensive player. 273, 307, 469, 196 ISO, 7 home runs, 116 WRC plus. With Mike Trout and other, reasonable names in this lineup, he would be an interesting bat on a fairly regular basis. But with no real support, he's a little bit shaky, a little bit difficult to roster outside of just, maybe you throw one-off shares at him. Does have a good contact profile. Doesn't strike out a tremendous amount for the power that he can give you. Shanuel just at 236, 320, 336, 91 WRC plus, 3 home runs. Lefty bat off the top against Michael Wacha. There's reason to believe that there could be success. You can see a little bit of moderate power and expectation of a little bit of output, but Shanuel hasn't been good. Mickey Moniak hasn't really been good. 198, 244, 309 over 86 chances this year, 56 WRC plus. Last year, 14 home runs in 323, finished at 280, 307, 495, the 215 ISO, 114 WRC plus. Had that really frisky stretch when he first came up where a lot of those home runs came from, and then really, really cooled. And just has been really inconsistent overall. Ton of strikeouts, not a lot of walks. So a lot of work to do to become an everyday player. Willie Calhoun, low strikeout, a lot of balls in play, knows how to draw a walk. Over 25 plate appearances, he's been good so far. Last year in 149, he was not good. Year before that, he only had 62. Going back in time further for Willie Calhoun, which is kind of unnecessary. 2021 wasn't good. 2020 wasn't good. 2019 wasn't good. There was one season in there where he did something. Was it 2018? Do we have to go that far back? Willie's now 29 years old and no, it's 2019. Was I on the wrong line? I think I was on the wrong line. Yeah, there it is. All right. 2019, 337 plate appearances, 21 home runs. This was when he first came up as like a highly regarded prospect. Created runs 10% better than average, had a 256 ISO, was looking like the guy he was supposed to be, and then completely failed at being that guy for the rest of time. But if you get him hitting fourth, 3,200, 2,200, especially on FanDuel, if you're going to this Angels team against a really mediocre pitcher, he's definitely in play. As weird as that is. Logan O'Hoppe, 8.23 in the home run model. He's got 2 on the season, 120 ISO, 107 WRC plus. He hit 14 in just 199 plate appearances last year. Started the season really hot, hit a few home runs, missed 3/4 of the season, more than that probably. And then came back and finished fairly strong. I do think he's a decent hitting catcher. Had a great contact profile last year. Didn't strike out all that much. Not 24.1. A little bit above average, but not egregious. Okay contact profile so far this year. The price is right. Cole Tucker at third base, 2,500. Outfielder second base on FanDuel at 26. A playable part, again, if you're going to this team, but another guy, just no success. No track record to speak of. Never really delivered on what was supposed to be an interesting career. Joe Adell, I could say similar things. He does have 5 home runs and 7 stolen bases in 90 plate appearances this year. A 247 ISO, a 126 WRC plus. Maybe finally pulling it together after being firmly on that list of never really put it all together for what he was supposed to be. Still just 25. So there's a little bit of time for Joe Adell to still be that guy. He was here early in those seasons that I just highlighted. That 2020 season, for example, he was just 21. So still room for Joe Adell to prove that he is that guy, and maybe he is becoming that guy as he's coming into his prime years. 25 to through like 28, 29 is really your prime, with 27 being like the one that everybody identifies as like, that is your prime year. Adrianza, Zach Neto at the bottom of the lineup, just afterthoughts. Neto does have 3 homers, 5 steals, 246, 291, 381, 90 WRC plus. As I said at the top of the show, you do want to keep these guys in consideration on a short slate. They are going to be lower owned than a lot of the higher priority bats and the guys above them in lineups, and they are cheap and flexible. But there's a reason that these guys hit at the bottom of the lineups for bad teams. So that's about it. I'll hop into the chat, see if you guys are shouting things at me, asking questions, etc., etc. Travis also game stacked the Coors game as well, but unfortunately it's 5-3 San Fran heavy. I went with I believe even 4-4 in that one. Currently just short of the cash line. In the 6th inning, it's 7-1 Colorado. San Fran not holding up their end. It was just silly. I'm sure this lineup is duped. Honestly, it's a moderately sized contest on FanDuel. But it was just silly. You could grab Pablo Lopez against the high strikeout Mariners. He went out and went 6, got the quality start. The win, struck out 10. And then you could stack that for the exact salary cap on FanDuel with 1, 2, 3, 4 from San Francisco and 2, 3, 4, 5 from Colorado. You probably shouldn't be able to put all those players together with like the top pitcher on the slate, even though it's bad teams in Colorado, just being the Coors game. Like I said, that was just kind of a straightforward one. I actually had different guys in there, but they ended up not playing Jung-Hoo Lee. So I had to switch things around, and I just landed on what I'm sure is a duped construction. But it's just interesting that you could straight line it that easily on FanDuel today. 30 people still here hanging out. We're an hour and 6 minutes into the show. We successfully talked for twice as long about half the games as what Chip did on his show. That was my goal. Not that I needed to stretch. Not that I needed to try to do that. God forbid we get a 15-game slate one of these days. It's going to be a marathon. Anyway, Sonny Gray, easily the top of the board. Very high priced, but again, not a ton of separation between him and Reed Detmers projection-wise. Even Ben Lively is right there, but I really skeptical. Outside of the matchup, very skeptical about Ben Lively, especially at that FanDuel price. It's uncomfortable enough that I do think he goes a little bit low-owned for the matchup on FanDuel. So he's not unplayable over there. At 76, I think he's going to be crazy popular on DraftKings for good reason. But I think if he is that highly owned, reason enough with the White Sox showing a little bit of power to grab some White Sox and maybe target that as an angle. If you did that, you can grab Waka as your cheapo pitcher. You could go probably, I'm sure there's a combination where you get to White Sox bats with Detmers and Gray and just take the top 2 pitchers. Or if you wanted Fede against Cleveland and consider him. I do think the way it's projected is weird. I think it's justifiable to keep Fede squashed down like the model was doing to him. I didn't want to go in there and manipulate it. But I probably do think on talent, he's better than Ben Lively and he's better than Michael Wacha. It would not surprise me, and I think the pricing is correct, or at least if you go by the DraftKings pricing. Fede should be the 3rd highest priced pitcher on this slate and should probably be pretty popular. It's just I like that Cleveland team. I like the things that they do on the other side. I think they're going to be good at limiting strikeouts. I think there's some interesting bats in that lineup. Did he get released, Larry? Let me pull that up. Whoa, that's funky. All right. So, no Florial. You get Brian Rocchio leading off, which is a completely bizarre decision. Let's just start the whole thing over again. All right, so Rocchio goes from here to here. Florial's out of the lineup. Rocchio's got a 223, 319, 301. I guess they're looking at the stolen bases and maybe figuring Steven Kwan's out. He's hurt. That's why he hasn't been. That's why they've got like a weird void at the top of the lineup right now. Florial's not a great fit. Maybe they're just thinking a little bit better on base and grab some speed there. There's nobody really getting on base at a better clip than that. So, yeah, I guess that makes sense. Then we've got Jimenez Ramirez, Josh Naylor. Fry is in the lineup there. Then Brennan moves to this spot. Bo Naylor, Freeman down here where Manzardo is, and Manzardo hitting 9th. So Manzardo dropping in the lineup with the positional conflict. Again, not ideal, but he's very, very cheap for the upside. Yeah, that is a funky lineup. We also got the Brewers, it looks like. Turan, Contreras, Yelich, Adames, Hoskins, Frelick, Gary Sanchez in the lineup, Jake Bauers in the lineup, and Joey Ortiz to round things out from Milwaukee. So that's a different one. So no Churio. So I was wrong. He did get another day off. So you get Gary Sanchez here, which is definitely interesting for power upside. They swapped these two guys. Hoskins 5, Sal Frelick 6. You get Jake Bauers here. So Perkins is also out of the lineup, and then it's Joey Ortiz down here. It's not an uninteresting version of the Brewers lineup. That's Sanchez and Bauers will give you a little bit of power out of the bottom spot. Joey Ortiz is expected to hit a little bit and has a little bit of pop in his bat too. It's a weird one though. We've got like all these lineups now. Cardinals lineup: Donovan Newtbar, Arenado, Burleson, Gorman, Carlson, Wynn. They have a Pajes too now? Okay. Somebody Pajes in catching for the Cardinals. Don't know who. And Ciani. So no Goldschmidt for the Cards. It's Donovan, Newtbar, Arenado. Gorman moving up to the 5 spot. Burleson hitting cleanup. I would have done that the other way around. Gorman's got way more pop than Burleson. Gorman's more interesting, though. Hopping back up the lineup a little bit. He's very cheap for his power upside. He's still making okay contact in terms of barrels. 4 home runs. Everything else has been bad. But that makes him more interesting moving back up the lineup. Carlson's there, Wynn's there. And then it's whoever this Pajes at catcher is and Ciani in the last spot. The White Sox went Pham, Sheets, Vaughn, Jimenez, Benintendi, Ramos, DeYoung, Lopez, and Martin Maldonado. That's the wrong game. So this is also different. So Tommy Pham moves up by a spot. Even more interesting to me in the leadoff spot. Nicky Lopez drops down to the 8 spot. Gavin Sheets moves from 4 to 2. Andrew Vaughn moves from 5 to 3. Eloy Jimenez drops down to the cleanup spot. Benintendi's hitting 5th. Then it's Ramos at 3rd. DeYoung right here. Lopez and then Martin Maldonado. So no Shoemake, no Corey Lee. The hell is Ramos again? Brian Ramos. Ramos, 342 double-A plate appearances last year, hit 14 home runs, stole 4 bases. Decent triple slash, good run creation. Hasn't really done anything in the show over his 16 plate appearances yet this year. Came straight up from double-A. In 98 plate appearances at double-A this year, 2 home runs, 2 steals. Below the Mendoza line in a 76 WRC plus, though. So that's not great, jumping from double-A at 182, 265, 307. But that's, again, 98 plate appearances. Last year he was at 271, 369, 457. So we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. But you're getting desperate if you're fishing out of the bottom of the White Sox lineup. Thank you, Larry. Pai's a 25-year-old rookie catcher for St. Louis. Yeah, you just get buried with Pedro Pais. With Herrera there all those years. Pais did have 16 homers in double-A last year over 497 plate appearances. It's not nothing. Seems capable of putting bat on ball. Traditional scouting doesn't really love him. 40 grade hit, 40 grade power, 45 grade raw power. Just kind of a filler piece, I think. Anyway, let's round this thing off, gang. That was more than enough for a 3-gamer. Just again, there's your pitching board. I do think Fede is the 3rd most talented and correctly the 3rd most highly priced pitcher on this slate, like I was saying. But I don't really like the matchup against Cleveland. I do think Ben Lively can succeed against this White Sox team, but I don't trust him at all. Very, very low faith. At 76, I think he's likely to be over-owned on DraftKings. Might be under-owned at the 10,000 on FanDuel, so it's a weird one. Waka, low faith, but reasonable expectations of success against that weak-ass Angels lineup. Tobias Myers, no real love. Even as a contrarian dart, I guess you can do it at 64. You're saving a little bit of money from these two guys, and neither of these guys are really all that high faith anyway. So it's not like you're getting all that different by throwing that dart instead of these two. It's just not. He's appropriately the lowest end pitcher on the slate. Home runs. By the way, check out our pals over at acemine.io. I'm sure everybody here already knows, but acemine.io optimizers, sim product for baseball, basketball, football. I don't think they have hockey just yet, but I'm sure they're working on it. NASCAR's up. MMA's up. PGA. I think NASCAR's up. I shouldn't have said that. I'm not sure about NASCAR. Either way, go check out acemine.io and come back here and report back and let me know what they've got. If you want to check them out, first 3 days over there on those guys always, totally free. And then if you decide you're going to sign up, which I'm confident you're going to do, promo code rotoscouts all in caps gets you 20% off your first month. So only a few guys above the magic number. It's a very short slate, but they happen to be White Sox. 3 of them are White Sox. Then you get the fourth one is Jose Ramirez on the other side of that game. You can see where I landed on the game stack, I would imagine. Eloy Jimenez, Gavin Sheets, Andrew Vaughn, Jose Ramirez, Tommy Pham, and Josh Naylor all coming out of that game as the top end of the board for home run upside. It's just, what else do you get out of those teams? I believe in Cleveland more to sequence and create runs and so on and so forth and do their thing. What do I get out of Chicago? Do they hit one home run and then completely let me down? Like Eloy Jimenez gets his, but the rest of these guys are just crap? That's very likely in the Chicago team. You even get DeYoung in here? I actually think DeYoung's in my lineup and I skipped Vaughn. I can't remember. How did I do that? Yeah, I think I have Jimenez, Sheets, Pham, and DeYoung in a game stack with, I forget who else. Ramirez, Naylor, Manzardo, who's down here, and Jimenez? That might be too expensive. I forget how I did it exactly, but it's a game stack of that game. Like I said, I kind of like it. St. Louis, the highest run total on the board. You get 3 cards in a row. Goldie's not in the lineup, though, so you get Gorman and Arenado. This is why I said, Gorman kind of interesting. This probably goes up to 9.5 maybe if we move him up the lineup like he did in the real-life confirmed lineup. Highest end Angels hitter is Logan O'Hoppe for home run upside at 8.23. Ward is at 7.47. You get Moniak and Adele right there. So they're showing a little bit of power. Nobody at the magic number. Everybody a little bit below it. But there's a group there if you're hunting for power upside from one of the worst teams in baseball. Another little run of Guardians there. The Royals are the one that's oddly not showing a ton of power. 7.91 for Bobby Witt. Nelson at just 6.44. Vinny at 6.89. Where the hell's Sal? Sal at 7.35. Let's look at that again real quick. Detmers does allow a little bit of premium contact, but not that many home runs. This could have gone either way. This could have been like mid-3s probably, given this contact. Same here. Maybe a little bit more upside for power for the Royals than what they're showing. But probably about right. Anyway, gang, that's it. I'm going to punch out of here. 450. We've done enough for a 3-gamer. Good luck out there. Somebody go win something. We'll be back tomorrow for a more complete slate for a Friday. See you, gang.